I walked into the rooftop restaurant right on time. The view was beautiful, with string lights and the city skyline in the background. Jessica had picked the place, of course. She always did. The hostess led me to the table where Jessica, Brianna, and Sophie were already seated, sipping colorful cocktails and laughing about something. I slid into my seat with a smile. I had already eaten dinner at home. After my car repairs last week wiped out most of my budget, I couldn't justify spending $40 on a salad. Tonight, I was here for the company, not the food. When the waiter came around, I asked for water. Jessica raised an eyebrow and smirked. "What? We too bougie for you now, Ratch," she said loud enough for the table to hear. Brianna and Sophie laughed. I kept my voice calm. "Not hungry," I said. But in my mind, I made a note. They thought I was cheap. Fine. Jessica took charge of the ordering like she always did. Lobster pasta, truffle fries, a charcuterie board, and 3 more cocktails. Sophie waved the waiter back for a dessert platter before they'd even finished their entrees. I sat, sipping my water, making small talk, and watching plates pile up. Brianna leaned over with a grin. "You're missing out," she said. I smiled politely. "Guess so." After a while, the waiter returned with the bill. He placed the leather folder in the center of the table. Jessica grabbed it first and scanned it. "All right," she announced. 95 each with tip. "Easy." I shook my head. I only had water. Sophie rolled her eyes. "We all share the vibe, Rachel. Don't be difficult." "I'm not paying for food I didn't eat," I said simply. Jessica's tone turned sharp. "Fine. We'll cover it. But maybe next time. Don't come if you can't keep up." They paid, but the mood was different after that. I kept my smile on, but inside, I felt a mix of irritation and satisfaction. Later that night, I saw Jessica's Instagram story, a group photo from the dinner with the caption, "Some people are fun until the bill arrives." Brianna and Sophie had commented with strings of laughing emojis, so that was how they wanted to play it. I remembered something. Jessica had booked an Airbnb for our girls' weekend next month, using my account to get a local discount, without even asking first. If I canceled my part, their costs would double. The next morning, I called the host and removed myself from the booking. 2 days before the trip, Jessica blew up my phone. "You're screwing us over. Fix this." I typed back, didn't want to ruin the vibe. Then I put my phone down and smiled. If they thought I was cheap before, they hadn't seen anything yet. The waiter hadn't been gone for 30 seconds before Jessica waved him back over with the confidence of someone who knew she'd be running the show. She grabbed the menu like it was her personal event plan and started rattling off dishes without even looking at me. Lobster pasta for the table, truffle fries, and a big charcuterie board to start. She ordered 2 different cocktails for herself, one because it looked pretty, and the other just to try it. Sophie jumped right in, leaning halfway across the table to make sure her voice carried. "We're going to need dessert later. And, oh, bring us a bottle of the house white too." Then she laughed and added, "Actually make it 2. The waiter scribbled quickly, probably hoping to escape before Jessica remembered more things she wanted. I sat back in my chair, my hands wrapped around my glass of water, and smiled like I was part of the excitement. In reality, I wasn't planning to touch any of it. Jessica kept flipping the menu, her finger tapping against items she was considering. "You guys okay with getting the calamari too? It's not the same if we don't have something fried." She didn't wait for a response before telling the waiter to add it on. Brianna was nodding along the whole time like a backup singer, agreeing with every choice Jessica made. Every now and then she glanced at me with that small, smug smile that felt just shy of an eye roll. When the waiter finally walked away, she leaned toward me with her elbow on the table. "You're seriously missing out," she said. I kept my voice light. "Guess so." Inside, I was thinking, and missing the bill too. Plates started arriving in waves. The charcuterie board was covered in fancy cheeses none of us could pronounce, crackers stacked in neat little piles, and tiny jars of jam. Jessica made a big show of rearranging it for her phone camera before letting anyone touch it. Next came the truffle fries, steaming and smelling like something from a commercial. Sophie dug in immediately, scattering crumbs across the table, already talking about how she couldn't wait for dessert. By the time the lobster pasta arrived, the table looked like a food magazine spread. Everything was oversized, colorful, and expensive. Jessica swirled her fork in the pasta and groaned dramatically about how worth it the price was. Brianna nodded again, sipping her cocktail and agreeing like they were in some kind of performance. I sipped my water, laughed at their jokes, and let the conversation flow around me. Every so often, someone would push a plate toward me and offer a bite, but I'd wave it off. "I'm good," I'd say, smiling. Sophie flagged down the waiter before the plates were even cleared. "We'll do the dessert platter," she said. Then, almost as an afterthought, "and another round of drinks." Jessica agreed instantly, ordering herself something off the signature cocktails list and asking if it came with the decorative flowers she saw at another table. The waiter nodded, took the menus, and disappeared again. By now, the table was buzzing with chatter and alcohol, everyone talking over each other about weekend plans and gossip. Jessica and Sophie were halfway through another round of drinks when the dessert arrived. Chocolate cake, creme brulee, and something involving way too much whipped cream. I stayed right where I was, my water glass in front of me, watching the plates get scraped clean. Brianna leaned over one more time, smirking like she was letting me in on a secret. Seriously, Rachel, you don't know what you're missing. I just smiled back. She was right, but not in the way she thought. The waiter came back to the table carrying the black folder and set it down in the middle. Jessica snatched it up without hesitation, flipping it open like she already knew she would be the one in charge of the numbers. She glanced over the total and grinned. "All right," she said, tapping the bill with her manicured nail. 95 each with tip. "Easy." I looked at her for a second, making sure I'd heard right. "I only had water," I said calmly. Jessica froze for half a beat before her smile turned tighter. Sophie let out a loud sigh and leaned back in her chair. "We all share the vibe, Rachel. Don't be difficult." Brianna shifted in her seat, glancing between us like she was hoping someone would make a joke to break the tension. Jessica, however, didn't seem interested in making it light. She slid the bill toward me like that would change my answer. "I'm not paying for food I didn't eat," I said. My voice was steady, not raised, but the words hung in the air heavier than I expected. Jessica's eyebrows lifted. "It's just easier to split it evenly," she said, her tone sharper now. "We always do it this way." I kept my eyes on her. I didn't order anything. "I'm not paying $95 for nothing." Sophie rolled her eyes again, this time adding a small laugh that didn't sound friendly. "God, Rachel, it's not that serious. You think we're going to sit here doing math for every little thing?" "I think I'm not paying for lobster and cocktails I didn't touch," I replied. Jessica's lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, it looked like she might argue again, but then she pulled her card out of her purse and set it on top of the bill. "Fine. We'll cover it," she said, each word clipped. "But maybe next time, I don't know. Skip it if you can't keep up." Brianna put her card down without looking at me, her mouth pulled into a small, fixed smile. Sophie did the same, shaking her head like this was all some big inconvenience. I sat back in my chair, still holding my water glass, and waited while the waiter collected the folder. He walked away without noticing the tension at the table. No one spoke for a few moments. The energy had shifted, and not in a small way. Jessica started talking about something else, a party next weekend, but it was forced, the kind of chatter that exists just to fill silence. Brianna nodded along, but her eyes stayed down. Sophie scrolled through her phone between sips of her drink. I kept my expression neutral, adding the occasional or yeah when someone looked at me, but I didn't push the conversation. My mind was already somewhere else, turning over the way Jessica's voice had changed when she said, "Skip it if you can't keep up," and how Sophie's little laugh felt less like amusement and more like a warning. The waiter came back with their cards and receipts, setting them down without a word. Jessica signed hers quickly, dropped the pen, and stood up. "Ready?" she asked, but it wasn't really a question. We walked out together into the warm night air, the city lights flickering below. They talked between themselves, their words coming in low bursts of laughter and half-finished sentences. I followed a step behind, listening but not joining in, my fingers wrapped loosely around the strap of my bag. I didn't say anything on the way to the parking lot, and neither did they. But in my head, the conversation wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The second we stepped out of the restaurant, Jessica spun around to face me. The streetlight above us caught the edge of her hair as she crossed her arm. "You know you ruined girls' night, right?" she said. I blinked at her. "By not paying for food I didn't eat?" Brianna jumped in before Jessica could answer. "It's not about the food, Rachel. It's about the principle. We always split things. Always." I kept my voice even. "I didn't order anything. I didn't eat anything. I'm not paying for it." Sophie let out a sharp laugh, not the nice kind. "God, you sound like my dad talking about bills. Nickel-and-diming over a stupid dinner. You made the whole thing awkward for everyone." I shrugged. "If it's awkward to expect to pay for only what I had, then I guess it's awkward." Jessica stepped closer, her tone harder now. "You think we like covering you? You think it's fun to be out and have someone refuse to be part of the group?" "I'm part of the group," I said, looking at her steadily. "I just didn't eat your lobster pasta." For a second, no one spoke. The traffic noise from the street filled the gap, along with the faint sound of music coming from the restaurant's rooftop speaker. Jessica finally huffed out a breath. "Fine, we'll cover it. But next time, don't come if you can't keep up." I didn't flinch. "Noted." Sophie muttered something under her breath, shaking her head as she pulled her phone out of her bag. Brianna looked down at the sidewalk, scuffing the toe of her shoe against a crack in the pavement. Jessica turned and started walking toward the parking lot like the conversation was over. We moved as a loose group, but the space between us felt bigger than the few feet of sidewalk. Their voices dropped to quieter tones when they spoke to each other. I stayed silent, letting my footsteps fill the gaps. At the corner, we stopped to wait for the light. Jessica didn't look at me when she spoke again. We planned this weeks ago. We picked the place because it was supposed to be fun, not whatever that was. I said nothing, just watched the cars pass. When the light changed, we crossed. Sophie's heels clicked sharply against the pavement, faster than the rest of us, like she couldn't wait to get to her car. Brianna lagged a little, fiddling with her keys. In the parking lot, Jessica unlocked her car with a beep and slid into the driver's seat without another word. Sophie got in beside her. Brianna gave me a small wave that didn't reach her eyes before heading to her own car. I stood there for a moment, watching them pull out one by one. The air smelled faintly of fried food drifting from the restaurant. Somewhere above, laughter floated from another table on the rooftop, light and easy, nothing like the heaviness that had followed us out. I walked to my car slowly, the sound of my shoes crunching on gravel filling the quiet. The engine hummed to life when I turned the key, but I didn't pull away right away. I sat there, hands on the wheel, staring at the restaurant lights in my rearview mirror. If they thought this was over, they were wrong. I got home, kicked off my shoes, and dropped my bag on the couch. The apartment was quiet, just the low hum of the fridge in the kitchen. I sat down and pulled out my phone, ready to scroll for a bit before bed. The first thing that popped up on my feed was Jessica's post. It was a picture from earlier that night, the four of us standing together at the restaurant, city lights glowing behind us. At first glance, it looked like a normal girls' night out shot. But then I saw the caption. Some people are fun until the bill arrives faced with rolling eyes skull. The words sat there on my screen, casual and sharp at the same time. I read it twice, then 3 times, feeling that slow heat rise in my chest. Brianna had already commented with 3 laughing emojis. Sophie added a string of crying laughing faces right after. They were quick, like they'd been waiting for it. I stared at their names under the post, the little blue hearts filling up under the comments. People who didn't even know the full story were already liking it. The more I looked at the picture, the more it felt staged. Jessica was front and center, her hand on Sophie's shoulder, Brianna leaning in on the other side. I was at the edge, smiling, but now all I could see was the space between me and the rest of them. It wasn't just annoyance anymore. This wasn't an awkward dinner or a little disagreement. They were making it a joke, turning it into something for everyone to see. They wanted people to think I was cheap, difficult, maybe even selfish. My phone buzzed with a notification. Someone else had liked the post. Another buzz, another comment. I put the phone down for a second, leaning back into the couch. The dim light from the screen lit up the room in soft flashes every time a new like came in. I thought about replying, about typing something sharp that would cut right through their little public game. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I picked my phone back up and scrolled through the comments again, my thumb dragging slowly down the screen. The laughing emojis kept coming. Some of our mutual friends added inside jokes I wasn't in on. One even tagged another person and wrote, "This reminds me of you, LOL." I didn't like the post. I didn't comment. I didn't react at all. I just sat there, watching it grow, watching more people join in without knowing the truth. It wasn't just a dinner bill anymore. They decided to make it a story, and now it was my turn to decide how the story ended. I was still thinking about that Instagram post the next morning when something clicked in my head. I remembered a conversation from a few weeks ago. Jessica had been talking about a girls' weekend she was planning. She wanted to go to this cute little beach town for 2 nights. The place had a nice boardwalk, good restaurants, and an Airbnb she had already picked out. Back then, she'd asked me for a favor. She said the Airbnb had a local discount for people in my area and asked if she could use my account to book it. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. I just figured we'd all split the cost later, like normal. She booked it right there on my phone, talking about how she was saving us money. Now I realized she had never really asked if I was okay with putting it in my name. She just assumed I would be fine with it, and I had let it slide. I pulled up the Airbnb app on my phone, and there it was. The reservation under my account, my payment info saved. The total was already charged to my card, with the balance due a week before the trip. The check-in date was only 2 weeks away. I scrolled through the details, and the math started adding up in my head. If I pulled out of the trip and canceled my spot, the rest of them would have to cover my share. And because the Airbnb charged a flat rate, it meant their costs would double. I sat there, staring at the screen, my thumb hovering over the cancel reservation button. My heart beat a little faster, not from guilt, but from the idea of turning the tables. I imagined Jessica's face when she realized she'd have to tell Sophie and Brianna that the price had gone up, all because she'd booked it without asking me properly. I imagined them scrambling to decide whether to still go or back out completely. I didn't press the button yet. I closed the app and set the phone down, leaning back in my chair. It wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about the way they had laughed at me, the way they had rolled their eyes, the way they had made me a punchline on. They wanted to play games? Fine. I could play too. I picked up my phone again and reopened the app. My finger hovered over the cancel option one more time. Not yet, I thought. Timing mattered. I would wait until the moment it would cause the biggest impact. That would be my move. And when it happened, there'd be no emojis to hide behind. I waited until the week of the trip. The air felt cooler that morning, sunlight spilling through my blinds, but my mood was sharp. I opened the Airbnb app and looked at the reservation one more time. The total amount sat there in bold, the host's name just below it. Instead of canceling through the app, I called the host directly. A friendly voice answered, asking how she could help. I explained that I wasn't going to be part of the stay anymore and wanted my name removed from the booking. She paused for a second, then said she could update the reservation so it was no longer tied to my account. The remaining guests would have to pay the balance themselves. When she confirmed it was done, I thanked her and hung up. My phone felt lighter in my hand. 2 days later, my screen lit up with a flood of notifications. A group text from Jessica, the kind of message that made you know something was wrong before you even opened it. Jessica, what the hell, Rachel? You pulled your name off the Airbnb? Before I could type, another came through. Jessica, you're screwing us over. The price doubled. We can't afford this last minute. I set the phone on my table, letting it buzz again. Then Sophie jumped in. Sophie, you could have told us. Now we have 2 days to figure this out. Brianna, seriously? This is not okay. I picked the phone back up, typing slowly, making sure every word landed. Me, didn't want to ruin the vibe. I sent it and leaned back, watching the dots appear and disappear as Jessica started typing again. She sent 3 short messages in a row. Jessica, not funny. Jessica, we already bought outfits for this week. Jessica, now we're either paying double or not going at all. I didn't respond. I could almost picture them in some group call, voices overlapping, each one blaming the other for how things turned out. I imagined Jessica explaining that she'd booked it under my account without actually clearing it with. The text slowed down after a while, like they had run out of things to say. The last one came from Brianna. Brianna, guess we're canceling then. No emojis, no jokes, just a flat sentence that told me everything. I set my phone face down on the table and let the quiet settle in. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed, a dog barked, and life went on like nothing had happened. But for them, the weekend they'd been planning for weeks had just fallen apart. I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. The weekend came, and I didn't hear much from them. I knew they hadn't completely given up on the trip. Late Friday morning, I got curious and checked Sophie's Instagram. Sure enough, there was a picture of the 3 of them standing in front of a faded building with peeling paint. The location tag said it all, a budget motel about 20 minutes from the beach. I almost laughed. This was the big girls' weekend? The kind of place where the sign buzzed and half the letters didn't light up at night? Their smiles in the picture looked tight, like they were trying hard to make it seem fun. Later that day, I heard from a mutual friend that they'd canceled most of their planned activities because the budget was too tight now. No fancy seafood dinner, no boat tour, no wine tasting. They were basically stuck walking around the boardwalk and eating from food stands. Meanwhile, I had my own plans. There was a free local art festival happening in the park near my apartment. Food trucks lined the street. Live music played from a small stage, and every corner was full of color. Paintings, sculptures, handmade jewelry. The air smelled like fresh popcorn and grilled corn. I wandered from booth to booth, sipping on a free sample of lemonade one vendor was handing out. A band started playing a song I recognized, and I stood under the string lights, tapping my foot to the beat. Strangers danced nearby. Kids laughed as they chased bubbles floating in the air. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the scene, the glowing lights above, the crowd enjoying themselves, the food stalls in the background. I typed out a short caption, "Best nights don't need a bill." I hit post. Within minutes, a few friends liked it and commented. Some asked where I was, others just sent heart emojis. I didn't tag the location, but I knew Jessica, Sophie, and Brianna would see it eventually. When the sun went down, the park lights came on, and the festival took on this warm, cozy glow. I grabbed a cheap taco from one of the trucks and sat on the grass, watching people laugh and talk like they'd known each other forever. It cost me almost nothing, but it felt full of life, sound, and color. That night, I checked my feed again. Jessica had posted a blurry photo of the motel pool with the caption, "Making the best of it." Only a handful of people had liked it. I locked my phone, leaned back on my couch, and smiled. Their weekend had been cut down to scraps, while mine had been effortless. And all it had cost me was showing up somewhere that didn't need a credit card swipe at the end. By Monday, word had spread through our wider friend group. My phone lit up with messages from people I hadn't heard from in months. Some asked, "What happened at that dinner?" Others just sent laughing emojis or "good for you." Jessica had clearly been talking. She made it sound like I ditched the trip and left them stuck, but she skipped over the part where they tried to make me pay for a $350 meal when I only had water. It didn't take long for sides to form. A few people told me they completely understood and would have done the exact same thing. One friend even said she'd been through something similar and wished she'd handled it the way I did. Then there were the others. A mutual friend sent a long text saying I was too petty and should have just paid to keep the peace. She ended it with, "Friendships are more important than money." I stared at that for a minute, then typed back, "If I'm petty for not paying for lobster I didn't eat, so be it." No reply came after that. As more people talked, little truths slipped out. Someone mentioned Jessica had admitted that booking the Airbnb under my account without asking probably wasn't smart. Sophie had complained about wasting money on the trip, and Brianna was upset about a motel room with no working AC. By midweek, the people calling me petty had gone quiet. The ones who agreed with me still talked about it, still laughed about how I'd stood my ground. A couple even invited me out for coffee, saying they liked that I didn't let them push me around. I didn't bother explaining myself to everyone. I didn't post anything or try to defend every detail. I just kept going with my week. One afternoon at the grocery store, I spotted Jessica in the next aisle. She looked up, saw me, and immediately turned away. No hello, no smile, just gone. I grabbed my cereal and moved on. It was clear things weren't going back to how they were before. And honestly, I was fine with that. Anyone who thought I owed them for food I didn't eat wasn't someone I needed close. By the end of the week, my phone had gone quiet. The chatter died down, and the whole thing faded out. But if it ever came up again, I knew exactly what I'd say. If that made me petty, I could live with it. A few weeks later, I was out running errands when my phone buzzed. It was a message from someone in our wider circle. You're not gonna believe this. Jessica just got stuck paying for half a huge dinner bill. I didn't answer right away, but I could feel myself smirking. She went on to explain that Jessica had gone out with a different group of friends. The dinner was fancy, lots of expensive dishes and plenty of drinks. But when the check came, 2 people at the table refused to split it evenly. They said they didn't eat as much and weren't paying for things they didn't order. Sounded familiar. I pictured her sitting there, staring at the bill, probably feeling the same frustration she'd tried to dump on me. Except this time, there was no one to guilt into covering her share. Later, I heard from another friend that she'd ended up paying way more than she expected because she didn't want to argue in front of the waiter. That made me laugh a little. Suddenly, the "we all share the vibe" rule didn't seem so fun anymore. I wasn't involved in any of it, but the irony was too perfect. She'd spent weeks making me look cheap, and now she'd been put in the exact same position, and lost. That night, I was scrolling through social media when I saw a photo she'd posted from that dinner. The caption was short: "Some people don't understand how to be fair." I almost choked laughing. Fairness had been the one thing I'd been asking for the night she turned on me. I didn't comment. I didn't even like the post. But I did screenshot it and send it to the friend who'd texted me earlier. Guess the experience only matters when you're not the one paying. She replied with a row of laughing emojis. It felt like the whole thing had come full circle. I didn't need to say anything else. There was nothing to prove. She'd gotten her own lesson without me lifting a finger. After that, I stopped hearing much about her. Our paths didn't cross, and I was fine with that. If she'd learned anything, maybe she'd think twice before trying to make someone else cover a bill they didn't owe. And if she didn't learn, well, sooner or later, someone else would teach her again. Do you think I did the right thing by refusing to pay for food I didn't eat? Or should I have just kept the peace with my friends? Thinking Face, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to hear your side. And if you want more wild friendship drama like this, make sure to follow so you don't miss the next twist.